After 10 years of marriage, her husband announced he had found his true love. Claiming she was down to earth and didn't care about money, she simply laughed, called her assistant and said, "Cancel his credit cards, stop paying his mother's medication, and change the locks on the house." Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family story channel. May the Almighty bless every woman with unwavering strength, endless grace, and a heart that radiates love to all around her. May He guard your health, illuminate your path with hope, and shower your homes with joy, laughter, and harmony. May this upcoming Christmas bring miracles, peace, and blessings beyond measure to you and your loved ones. You are the backbone of every family, the silent warriors whose courage and love inspire the world. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." Juliette Wegner knew her marriage was ending the moment her husband smiled. Not the smile he gave her on their wedding day, or during the quiet mornings when they used to share coffee in bed before the world demanded their attention. This smile belonged to someone else entirely, smug, practiced, rehearsed in mirrors she would never see. Denzel Drew stood in the doorway of their penthouse, his leather overnight bag already packed, wearing that stranger's smile like a mask that finally fit. "I'm leaving," he said, and the words carried no weight of regret. "I've found someone real, someone who doesn't need my money or my status, someone down to earth." Juliette sat perfectly still on the sofa, her hands folded in her lap, watching this man who wore her husband's face say words that sounded scripted. The late afternoon sun cut through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their downtown penthouse, the same windows she had stood before countless mornings, watching the city wake up while Denzel slept in the bed she paid for. "Her name is Bryn," Denzel continued, his voice gaining confidence from her silence. "She's a yoga instructor. She doesn't care about designer labels or impressing people at charity galas. She sees me, the real me, not the successful doctor everyone thinks they know." Something cold settled in Juliette's chest. Not heartbreak, not yet. Recognition. She recognized this speech. It had the polish of repetition, the smoothness of something practiced. How many times had he rehearsed this moment? How many conversations had he had with Bryn about how he would deliver this news? "Say something," Denzel demanded, his smile faltering. He wanted tears. He wanted begging. He wanted the scene he had imagined, the one that would justify whatever story he had already told Bryn about his cold, controlling wife. Instead, Juliette's mind traveled backward through time. She remembered the boy she met in college, the one with holes in his shoes and dreams that burned brighter than his circumstances. He had been beautiful then, not just his face, but his hunger for something more, his determination to rise above the poverty that had marked his childhood. She remembered their first real conversation in the university library, how his eyes lit up when he talked about becoming a doctor, about saving lives, about proving everyone wrong who had ever counted him out. She remembered working 3 jobs while he studied: overnight shifts at the hospital as an administrator, weekend consulting for her father's firm, freelance grant writing that paid pennies but kept their lights on. She remembered surviving on 4 hours of sleep, drinking cold coffee at dawn, her eyes burning from exhaustion while Denzel slept peacefully, his textbooks spread across the bed she barely had time to lie in. She remembered the day he got accepted into medical school, how he lifted her off her feet and spun her around their cramped apartment, promising her the world. "We did it, Jules," he had whispered against her hair. "We're going to make it." "We." He had said we. She remembered the meeting with her father, the one Denzel never knew she orchestrated. Her father, skeptical and protective, had listened as Juliette made her case. Denzel had potential, talent, drive. All he needed was a chance. Her father had agreed to fund Denzel's first position at the private hospital, to give him the opportunity that would launch his career, but he had made Juliette promise something. "If he ever makes you small, walk away. Promise me." She had promised. Then she had broken that promise every day for 10 years. Juliette. Are you even listening to me? Denzel's voice pulled her back to the present. He stood closer now, his expression irritated. I'm trying to be honest with you. The least you could do is acknowledge that I'm being mature about this. Mature. The word tasted like ashes in her mouth. She remembered the miscarriage, the sudden pain that woke her at 3 in the morning, the blood, the terror. She had called Denzel 17 times. 17. He had been at a medical conference in San Francisco, unreachable, his phone turned off because he was networking. She had driven herself to the emergency room, one hand on the wheel and one pressed against her stomach, whispering prayers to a God she wasn't sure she believed in. She had lost their baby alone, in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and despair, while nurses she didn't know held her hand and told her everything would be okay. Denzel had arrived the next afternoon, his conference badge still hanging around his neck, and the first words out of his mouth were not "I'm sorry" or "Are you okay?" They were, "Did you call my mother? She's going to be devastated." 3 days later, he had asked when she would be ready to go back to work. "We can't both be off right now," he had said, his tone reasonable, practical. "One of us needs to keep things stable." She had gone back to work. She had kept things stable. She had buried her grief so deep that sometimes she forgot it was there until late at night when she would wake up and remember the weight that had been inside her, the future that had bled away. "I'm taking my things tonight," Denzel said, moving toward their bedroom. "Bryn has an apartment we can stay at until I find my own place. I've already talked to a lawyer. This doesn't have to be ugly, Juliet. We can be adults about this." Adults, as if he hadn't just detonated their entire life with the casualness of someone ordering coffee. Juliet stood, her movements slow and deliberate. She walked to the window and looked out at the city she had helped build him into. Down there, somewhere among the glittering buildings and rushing traffic, was Bryn, the yoga instructor who didn't care about money, the woman who saw the real Denzel. Did Bryn know that the real Denzel had let his wife hemorrhage alone while he sipped champagne at a conference reception? Did she know that the real Denzel's mother only had a house because Juliet had paid the mortgage for 15 years? Did she know that every self-made success story Denzel told at dinner parties was built on Juliet's invisible labor? "I've tried to make this work," Denzel said from the bedroom, his voice muffled by distance and doors. "God knows I've tried. But you're just so cold, Juliet, so focused on appearances and status. Bryn is warm. She's real. She doesn't need me to be anything except myself." Cold. The word he used when she didn't smile enough at his hospital functions. The word he used when she was too tired for sex after working 16-hour days. The word he used when she cried about the miscarriage and he needed her to be stronger. She heard him on the phone now, his voice dropping into that intimate tone she used to think was reserved for her. "Baby, I'm packing now." "Yeah, she's taking it better than I thought. I told you. She's all about control. She won't make a scene." I know. I can't wait to be free either." "Finally, right? After all these years of pretending." "I love you too." Pretending. All these years of pretending. Something inside Juliet cracked, but it didn't break. It crystallized. It became diamond hard and clear. She pulled out her phone and made a single call. "Sharon," she said quietly when her assistant answered. "Cancel all credit cards under Denzel Drew's name. Immediately. Stop the automatic payments to his mother's house. Contact the property management company and have the locks changed tonight. And Sharon, call my father. Tell him I need to see the hospital contracts. All of them." "Right away," Sharon said, her voice professionally neutral, though Juliet heard the understanding beneath it. Sharon had always known. They all had always known. They just waited for Juliet to see it too. Denzel emerged from the bedroom carrying his bag, his phone pressed to his ear. "I'm walking out now, baby. Yes, I'm really doing it. I'm finally free." He stopped in front of Juliet, his expression almost pitying. "I hope you find someone who can make you happy, Juliet. Someone who doesn't mind your need to control everything. I really do wish you well." She didn't respond. She simply watched as he walked to the door, as he reached for the handle with the confident grip of a man who believed he was walking into his new life, unburdened and victorious. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The lock engaged with a decisive sound that seemed to echo through the suddenly quiet penthouse. Juliet stood motionless for a long moment, listening to the silence that used to terrify her. Now it felt like space to breathe. She walked to Denzel's home office, the room he had insisted on having even though he rarely worked from home. The room she wasn't supposed to enter because he needed privacy for patient files. She opened his laptop, the one he had forgotten in his rush to start his new life. The screen glowed to life, no password required. He had been in such a hurry that he hadn't even logged out. His email was open. The inbox was standard: hospital correspondence, spam, newsletters. But there, in the drafts folder, was an email that made Juliet's blood stop moving through her veins. The email was addressed to someone named Richard Vance, marked as Attorney Confidential. The date at the top made her knees weak, 6 months before Bryn's name had ever been mentioned. The subject line read, "Divorce Strategy, Maximizing Assets." Juliet clicked it open, and the first line destroyed whatever small hope she had still been carrying that this betrayal was spontaneous, that Denzel had simply fallen out of love. "Richard, I need this to look like her fault. I need documentation that she's controlling, possibly emotionally abusive. I can't leave this marriage with nothing when she has everything. Make me look like the victim. That's the only way this works." Juliet's hands trembled as she scrolled through the draft, reading Denzel's calculated plan to destroy her while taking half of everything she had built for him. The affair with Bryn wasn't the reason he was leaving. It was the weapon he had chosen to justify his exit, and he had been sharpening that weapon for months before Bryn had even entered the picture. Chapter 2. The email that changed everything. Juliet read the draft email 3 times before her hands stopped shaking enough to scroll further. The document Denzel had composed for his attorney wasn't just a strategy, it was a blueprint for her destruction. Every paragraph detailed with clinical precision how to dismantle her credibility, how to paint her as the villain in a story he had been writing long before he ever met Bryn. Document instances where she questions my decisions, frame as controlling behavior. Her financial support should be repositioned as financial manipulation. The miscarriage is delicate but useful. Suggest she blamed me, created emotional distance that I tried desperately to bridge. Juliet's stomach lurched. He was going to use their dead baby as evidence against her. She kept reading, her horror mounting with each line. "Her success intimidates me." Don't say that. Say her success obsession left no room for emotional intimacy. She chose her father's business over starting a family. Find examples of her prioritizing work over our relationship. Sharon, her assistant, might be willing to provide testimony if approached correctly. She's seen Juliet at her worst. Sharon. He thought he could turn Sharon against her. The draft continued with names, dates, specific incidents reframed through a lens of malicious intent. The time Juliet had worked through their anniversary because her father needed her at an emergency board meeting became proof she valued money over marriage. The weekend she spent helping her college roommate through a divorce became suspicious behavior, possibly an affair. But it was the final paragraph that made Juliet's vision blur with rage. "Richard, I need you to understand. I've been laying groundwork for 18 months. I've told our friends she's been difficult lately. I've mentioned to colleagues that she's controlling at home. I've created a narrative where my leaving won't surprise anyone. They'll feel sorry for me. That's crucial. By the time we file, everyone will already believe I'm the victim here. She won't see it coming until it's too late." 18 months. He had been planning this for 18 months. Juliet sat back in Denzel's chair, her mind racing backward through the calendar. 18 months ago, they had celebrated their 9th anniversary. He had taken her to the restaurant where they had their first date, ordered champagne, told her he loved her while holding her hand across the table. She had believed him. She had believed every word, while he was planning her annihilation. Her phone buzzed. "Sharon, efficient as always." Credit cards cancelled. Locks changed. Your father wants to see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. He said to tell you he always knew Denzel was a mistake, and he's sorry he didn't push harder. Thank you, Sharon. One more thing. Denzel mentioned you in some documents. He thought you might testify against me. There was a long pause. Then Sharon's voice came back, sharp as glass. That man is dumber than I thought. I'll prepare my testimony, but it won't be the one he's expecting. I've kept records of every nasty thing he said about you when he thought no one important was listening. Send me the attorney's information when you retain someone. After they hung up, Juliet continued searching through Denzel's computer. She found a hidden folder labeled Personal Journal, password protected, but Denzel had used the same password for everything. Bryn's birthday, she realized with bitter irony. The journal entries went back years. She started with the most recent and worked backward. Bryn told me I deserve better than Juliet. She's right. I've given this marriage everything. And what do I get? A wife who's more interested in her father's approval than in being a real partner. Bryn makes me feel alive. She laughs at my jokes. She doesn't correct me in front of people. She doesn't make me feel small. Juliet made her feel small. She scrolled back further. Juliet cried again today about the baby. It's been 2 years. I know I'm supposed to be supportive, but honestly, maybe it was for the best. She would have been an anxious mother, probably would have hired nannies to do all the real work anyway. I can't say that out loud, obviously, but I'm tired of pretending to grieve something that might have saved me from an even bigger trap. The words felt like acid on her skin. She kept reading, her horror compounding. Started therapy today, not because I need it, but because documenting my efforts to save the marriage will look good later. The therapist is easy to manipulate. I painted Juliet as cold and distant, myself as the devoted husband trying everything. He bought it completely. These sessions will be excellent evidence when the time comes. The therapist. The marriage counselor Denzel had insisted they see, the one who had made Juliet feel like she was failing at being a wife. It had all been theatre. She found an entry from 4 years ago. Ran into Kelly at the hospital today. She still won't look at me. Good. The less she says about what happened, the better. Juliet would leave me if she knew, and I can't afford that yet. I need to build my reputation first, establish myself independently. Then I can leave on my terms. Kelly. That name meant nothing to Juliet, but clearly it should have. The earliest entries were different in tone, younger, more genuine, and somehow more damning because of it. Married Juliet today. Her father gave us a check that made me dizzy. I know I'm supposed to love her for herself, and I do mostly, but I also love what she gives me access to. Is that wrong? Her world, her connections, her money. It's all going to make me into someone important. She's my ticket out of everything I used to be. Her ticket. She had been his ticket. Juliet closed the laptop and walked to the window. The city glittered below, indifferent to her devastation. Somewhere down there, Denzel was probably with Bryn, celebrating his freedom, believing he had executed his plan perfectly. He had no idea what was coming. Her phone rang, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her press accept. Mrs. Drew? A woman's voice, young and uncertain. You don't know me. My name is Kelly Reeves. I used to work at Brookfield Hospital with your husband. I need to talk to you about something that happened 4 years ago. Something Denzel made me promise never to tell anyone. Juliet's grip tightened on the phone. I'm listening. He threatened me. He said if I ever spoke about what he did, he'd destroy my nursing career. And he did it anyway. Got me fired. Blacklisted me from every hospital in the city. I've been working in retail for 3 years because of him. Kelly's voice cracked. I heard through some people that he left you. I know this is terrible timing, but I can't stay silent anymore. There are others, 3 others that I know of. Women he hurt and then buried. Tell me everything, Juliet said, her voice steady despite the chaos churning inside her. And Kelly, I'm going to need you to tell it again on the record to my attorney. I will, Kelly said. I've been waiting for someone to finally listen. We all have. After the call ended, Juliet made a list. Not of her emotions, those were too overwhelming to organize. A list of actions, concrete and achievable. Contact Kelly and the other women, get their stories documented, meet with her father, access the hospital contracts, find the best divorce attorney in the state, not the most expensive, the most ruthless, compile every financial record, every email, every piece of evidence of who really built Denzel's career, destroy him legally, professionally, and publicly. She felt no guilt about this decision. Denzel had declared war 18 months ago. She just hadn't known she was in the battle, but she was awake now, and she had resources he had forgotten existed because he had been so focused on taking credit for them. Her phone buzzed with a text from Denzel. "Hope you're okay. I know this is hard. Let me know when you're ready to talk about dividing things fairly." Fairly. As if fairness had ever been part of his calculations. She didn't respond. Instead, she opened her laptop and began her own document. Meticulously detailed, emotionally devastating. The true story of their marriage, backed by evidence Denzel didn't know she had. Bank statements, emails to her father, receipts for every sacrifice she had made, and now, testimony from women whose voices Denzel had tried to silence. By dawn, Juliet had a plan that would have made a general proud. Comprehensive, strategic, designed to leave no room for Denzel's narrative to breathe. She showered, dressed in her sharpest suit, and applied makeup with the precision of someone preparing for war. At exactly 8 a.m., she walked into her father's office. He stood when she entered, his expression a mixture of pride and fury. "Tell me what you need," he said simply. "Everything," Juliet replied. "I need everything he thinks he owns, and then I need him to understand exactly what he's lost." Chapter 3. The Mother's Choice. Estelle Drew called Juliet at 6 in the morning, 3 days after Denzel left. "Please," the older woman's voice trembled through the phone. "Please, I don't understand what's happening. My medication, the pharmacy says my prescription coverage is cancelled. The mortgage company called about the house. Juliet, what's going on?" Juliet stood in her kitchen, watching coffee drip into a cup she wouldn't drink. She hadn't slept. The bags under her eyes were testament to nights spent reading Denzel's journal, memorizing his lies, preparing for battle. "I'll come see you," Juliet said quietly. "This morning. We need to talk." "Denzel said you'd do this." Estelle's voice turned sharp. "He warned me you'd punish me for his choices. I never thought you'd be so cruel." Cruel. The word landed like a slap, but Juliet had been slapped by words before. She had built up calluses. "I'll be there in an hour," she said, and ended the call. Estelle's house was a modest brick home in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where neighbors still waved and knew each other's names. Juliet had bought it 7 years ago, when Estelle's landlord threatened eviction. Denzel had presented the keys to his mother like a gift he'd saved for, his sacrifice, his devotion. Estelle had cried and called him her blessing. Juliet had never corrected the story. She had thought it didn't matter who got credit as long as Estelle had a home. Now, walking up the familiar driveway carrying a leather portfolio, she understood how deeply that silence had cost her. Estelle opened the door, her face lined with worry and age, her hands shaking slightly. The early tremors of Parkinson's that medication kept mostly at bay. Medication Juliet paid for. "Come in," Estelle said, her tone cold. "I suppose you're here to explain why you're punishing an old woman for her son's mistakes." Juliet walked into the living room she'd furnished, sat on the couch she'd purchased, and placed her portfolio on the coffee table she'd selected. Everything in this house was her ghost, invisible to everyone who lived in it. "Estelle, I need you to look at something." Juliet opened the portfolio and spread documents across the table. "This is the deed to this house. See the name on the purchase agreement? Mine, not Denzel's. Mine." Estelle's eyes widened. "But Denzel said, here are the mortgage statements, 15 years of payments, every single one from my account." Juliet laid out another stack. Your medical bills, your Parkinson's medication, your physical therapy, your groceries when you couldn't afford them, all of it, Estelle. Every dollar came from me. The older woman's hands trembled harder as she picked up papers, scanning them with growing horror. That's not possible. Denzel told me he was taking care of me. He said you didn't want to help, that you thought I was a burden, but he insisted. He lied. Juliet's voice remained steady, clinical. She couldn't afford emotion yet. Denzel has never paid for anything in this house. He's never paid your medical bills. He took credit for my money while telling you I was the problem. Estelle sank into her chair, the papers falling from her hands. Why would he do that? Because he needed you to love him more than you respected me. Because every time you praised him for taking care of you, it proved to himself that he was a good man, even while he was planning to destroy his marriage. Juliet pulled out another document. This is a journal entry from his computer, dated 3 years ago. She watched Estelle's face as the older woman read her son's words. Mum thinks I'm some devoted son, sacrificing everything for her and Juliet. The truth is, I haven't paid for anything in years. It's all Juliet's money, but Mum doesn't need to know that. Let her think I'm the hero. It's useful. Useful. He had found his mother's gratitude useful. Estelle's face crumpled. No, my Denzel wouldn't. He's a good boy. He's a good man. He was a good boy once, Juliet said, her voice softer now. I loved that boy. I married that boy. But that's not who he became. You're doing this because he left you, Estelle accused, tears streaming down her face. You're trying to turn me against my own son because you're angry. Juliet pulled out her phone and played an audio file. It was from a family dinner at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Denzel's voice filled the room, slurred slightly from wine. Honestly, the best part about Mom living in that house is that everyone thinks I bought it for her. Do you know how good that makes me look? Dr. Drew, the devoted son who takes care of his aging mother. Meanwhile, Juliet's the one writing checks, and I get all the credit. It's perfect. Another voice on the recording, Denzel's younger brother Marcus, who had died in a car accident 6 months ago. Man, that's cold. Does Mom know? God, no. Why would I tell her? Let her think I'm her hero. It makes my life easier. Estelle made a sound like a wounded animal. The recording kept playing. Marcus's voice again. What about Juliet? She doesn't mind? Denzel's laugh, sharp and dismissive. Juliet doesn't even notice. She's too busy trying to prove herself to her father. I just let her pay for everything and take the credit. Been doing it for years. She's so desperate to believe we're a team that she never questions it. Juliet stopped the recording. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus knew, Estelle whispered. My Marcus knew what Denzel was doing, and he never told me. Marcus tried to tell you, Juliet said gently. 3 weeks before he died, he called me, asked if I knew what Denzel was really like. I didn't understand what he meant then. I do now. Estelle stared at the papers scattered across her coffee table, at the evidence of her son's calculated deception. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. What do you want from me? The truth, Juliet said simply. Denzel is going to court claiming I was controlling, abusive, that I used money to manipulate him. He's going to paint himself as a victim. I need you to testify to what really happened. I need you to tell the truth about who paid for your life all these years. He's my son. I know, and I'm not asking you to stop loving him. I'm asking you to stop lying for him. Estelle was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of a mortgage statement. If I do this, if I testify against Denzel, he'll hate me. He's been lying to you for 15 years, Estelle. He's been using your love as a shield while spending my money. Does that sound like love to you? The older woman's tears fell silently. I don't know what love sounds like anymore. Juliet reached across the table and took Estelle's trembling hand. I'll keep paying for your medication. The house is yours. It was always meant to be yours. I'm not punishing you for Denzel's choices. I'm asking you to help me stop him from destroying me the way he's been destroying everyone who trusted him. The women, Estelle said suddenly. There were women, weren't there? At the hospital. I heard rumors, but Denzel said they were lies, jealous people trying to hurt him. Juliet nodded. 4 women that I know of. He got them fired or transferred. Destroyed their careers when they wouldn't stay quiet. Dear God, Estelle covered her face with her hands. What did I raise? You raised a boy who had potential, Juliet said. Somewhere he chose to become this. That's not your fault. Estelle lowered her hands, her expression transformed by something Juliet recognized, the terrible clarity that comes when denial finally breaks. I'll testify, she said. I'll tell them everything. But Juliet, I need you to know something. When Denzel was young, his father used to tell him that poor people had to be smarter than rich people to survive, that taking credit and using people wasn't wrong, it was survival. I should have corrected that. I should have taught him different. Instead, I just felt sorry for him, for us, for everything we didn't have. Maybe I taught him that being a victim was more useful than being honest. You're not responsible for the man he chose to become. Maybe not entirely, Estelle said, but I'm responsible for staying silent. Not anymore. 2 hours later, Juliet left with a signed affidavit and something she hadn't expected, Estelle's blessing. Burn it all down, the older woman had said at the door. Whatever he built on lies, burn it down. Maybe then he'll have to face who he really is. As Juliet drove away, her phone buzzed with a text from Denzel. I heard you went to see my mother. Stay away from her. This is between us, not her. She replied with a photo of Estelle's signed affidavit. His response came immediately. You're going to regret this. Juliet smiled grimly and texted back, No, Denzel, you are. Chapter 4. The Women He Broke. Dr. Hugo Brennan's office at Brookfield Hospital overlooked the city, floor-to-ceiling windows framing a view of power and prestige. Juliet had been here before, years ago, when she'd quietly arranged for Denzel's first position. Dr. Brennan had been skeptical then, a young black man from a poor background, talented but raw, untested. Juliet had convinced him to take a chance. Now she sat across from the same desk, watching the same man study documents she'd provided, his expression growing darker with each page. I knew, Dr. Brennan said finally, his voice heavy with regret. Not everything, but I knew something was wrong with Denzel. I just couldn't prove it. You can prove it now, Juliet said. Dr. Brennan looked up, his eyes sharp. You've been gathering evidence on your own husband for how long? 3 years. Juliet met his gaze without flinching. I started noticing patterns, the way women at the hospital would avoid him, the whispers that stopped when I walked into rooms. I told myself I was paranoid, that grief over the miscarriage was making me see threats that weren't there. But then I overheard a conversation between 2 residents. They were talking about someone they called the Predator, someone who used his position to coerce junior staff. I knew they meant Denzel before they said his name. Why didn't you come to me then? Because I wasn't ready to blow up my life on suspicion. I needed proof, so I started documenting everything. Every unexplained late night, every woman who left his department unexpectedly, every rumor I could trace back to a source. She pushed a thick folder across the desk. 4 women, documented patterns of harassment, promises of advancement in exchange for silence, retaliation when they refused. Dr. Brennan opened the folder, and Juliet watched his professional mask slip into genuine anger as he read. Kelly Reeves. I remember her. Excellent nurse. Denzel said she was stealing medication. We had to let her go. She wasn't stealing anything. She rejected Denzel's advances and he fabricated evidence to destroy her career. Jesus Christ. Dr. Brennan kept reading. Dr. Nisha Patel. She left for a position in Boston. Denzel told me she couldn't handle the pressure of our program. Denzel cornered her in a supply closet. When she reported him to HR, he convinced them she was making it up to cover her poor performance reviews he'd written himself. She left the state to escape him. The litany continued. Each woman, each story of professional destruction masquerading as poor performance or personal failure. Dr. Brennan's jaw tightened with each revelation. Why are you showing me this now? Because Denzel is going to try to paint himself as a victim in our divorce. He's going to use his reputation, his charm, his story of being a self-made success to make me look like the villain. I need these women to be able to tell their truth, and I need someone with authority to back them up. Dr. Brennan was quiet for a long moment. You know this will destroy his career, possibly end his ability to practice medicine. I know. You're okay with that? Juliet thought about Kelly, working retail after years of nursing training, about Dr. Patel, who had to flee to another state to rebuild her life, about the medical student who dropped out entirely because Denzel's harassment made her doubt whether she belonged in medicine at all. I'm more than okay with it, she said. I'm counting on it. There's something else you should know, Dr. Brennan said slowly, about your father's investment in this hospital. Juliet waited. He didn't just fund Denzel's position. He bought controlling interest in the hospital 3 years ago. You own 51% of this institution, Juliet. Your father structured it that way specifically. He put the shares in your name, not Denzel's. Said something about making sure you always had leverage if you needed it. The words hit her like a physical blow. I own the hospital? You're the majority shareholder. Denzel doesn't know. Your father kept it quiet, had the paperwork buried in holding companies and trusts. But yes, technically Denzel works for you. Juliet laughed, a sound sharp enough to cut. My father knew. Even then he knew I'd need this someday. He's a smart man, and he loves you enough to plan for your protection even when you weren't ready to protect yourself. Dr. Brennan leaned forward. Here's what I'm proposing. Bring these women in. Let them tell their stories to the hospital board. We'll launch an official investigation. And Juliet, when Denzel is suspended, and he will be suspended, it'll be your hospital that does it. Your authority. Your power. When can we do this? Tomorrow. I'll contact the women. Explain that they'll be protected this time. That the person who destroyed their careers no longer has any power here. He paused. Are you sure you want to be there when we tell him? Juliet thought about the 18 months Denzel had spent planning her destruction, the journal entries calling her cold, the affair he'd used as a weapon, the way he'd held her while their baby bled out of her body and then asked when she'd be ready to get back to work. I want to see his face, she said, when he realizes he never had the power he thought he did. The next morning, Juliet sat in the hospital boardroom, watching 4 women file in one by one. Kelly, now working as a department store manager, wearing a name tag that said Guest Services. Dr. Nisha Patel, who had flown in from Boston, her expression determined but fragile. Cara Rodriguez, the medical student who now worked in pharmaceutical sales. And Jennifer Wu, a former resident who had switched to research to avoid patient-facing work where she might encounter men like Denzel. Dr. Brennan made introductions, explaining that Juliet was not just Denzel's soon-to-be ex-wife, but the hospital's majority owner. I'm sorry, Juliet said to each of them. I'm sorry I didn't know sooner. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. You didn't know because he was careful, Kelly said. He made sure his wife never saw who he really was. That's part of how he got away with it. Everyone thought Dr. Drew would never because he had this perfect marriage, this perfect life. It wasn't perfect, Juliet said quietly. I just didn't let anyone see the cracks. Jennifer Wu spoke up, her voice shaking but strong. When he cornered me in the parking garage, told me I'd never make it as a doctor if I didn't learn to be friendlier, I reported it. HR told me there was no evidence, that Dr. Drew was a respected physician, and I was a struggling resident with an axe to grind. I had to choose between my career and my sanity. I chose sanity. Tell them everything, Dr. Brennan said. Everything he said, everything he did, everything he took from you. It's all going on the record now. For 2 hours, Juliet listened to the systematic destruction Denzel had wrought. Each woman's story had variations, but the pattern was identical. Denzel identified women he saw as vulnerable or ambitious, offered mentorship or opportunity, then twisted it into something that left them with impossible choices: comply and hate themselves, or resist and watch their careers implode. The worst part was hearing how he'd used Juliet as a shield. He told me his wife was controlling and cold, Dr. Patel said, that she didn't understand him. He made me feel like I was special, like I was the one person who really saw him. Looking back, I realize every predator tells the same story, but at the time, I believed him. He showed me pictures of you, Kara added. Said you were beautiful but empty, that you only cared about money and status. He made it sound like his marriage was a prison, and I felt sorry for him. She stopped, swallowed hard. I almost slept with him because I felt sorry for him. Juliet felt sick. He had weaponized her, turned her into a villain in stories she never agreed to be part of. There's more, Kelly said hesitantly. After he got me fired, he called me, said if I ever told anyone what really happened, he'd make sure I never worked in healthcare again. But that wasn't the threat that scared me. She looked directly at Juliet. He said if I told you specifically, he'd claim I was obsessed with him, that I'd stalked him, that you'd believe him over me because you were desperate to keep your perfect marriage intact. He was right. I thought you'd never believe me over him. I believe you now, Juliet said, and I'm going to make sure everyone believes you. At exactly 2 p.m., Denzel arrived for what he thought was a routine department meeting. He walked into the boardroom smiling, confident, completely unprepared for what waited. His smile died when he saw the 4 women seated along one side of the conference table. "What is this?" he demanded, looking at Dr. Brennan. "This is your reckoning," Dr. Brennan said calmly. "Sit down, Dr. Drew." Denzel's eyes swept the room, landing on Juliet last. "You did this. You poisoned them against me." "I didn't have to," Juliet said. "You did that yourself years ago. I just gave them a safe place to finally tell the truth." "This is insane. I'm not listening to this." Denzel turned to leave. "Sit down," Dr. Brennan's voice cracked like a whip. "Or I'll have security escort you to this chair. Your choice." Denzel sat, his expression shifting from shock to calculation. Juliet watched him assess the room, looking for his exit strategy, his defense. He settled on offense. "These women are lying," he said flatly. "This is clearly a conspiracy orchestrated by my vengeful ex-wife who can't accept that I left her for someone better." "Better?" Kelly stood up, her voice shaking with rage. "You destroyed my career because I wouldn't sleep with you. You fabricated evidence of theft. You stole 3 years of my life." "That's not what happened. I have the emails," Juliet interrupted, sliding a folder across the table. "The ones you thought you deleted. The IT department recovered them for me. Would you like me to read them aloud, or would you prefer to maintain what's left of your dignity?" Denzel's face went pale. Dr. Brennan opened the folder and read, "Email from Denzel Drew to Kelly Reeves. You know what you need to do if you want that promotion. Stop playing hard to get. It's not attractive. Email 2. Your loss. Don't come crying to me when your career stalls because you couldn't be smart about how this hospital works." "That's out of context." "There are 47 more emails," Juliet said, "and that's just Kelly. We have documentation for all 4 women, plus 3 additional harassment complaints that HR mysteriously lost, except I found the backups." Denzel looked at her with something she'd never seen before: fear. "You can't do this. You can't just destroy my career because you're angry I left you." "I'm not destroying your career, Denzel. I'm revealing what you built it on." Juliet leaned forward. "Did you know I own this hospital? That my father put 51% in my name 3 years ago? You work for me. You've always worked for me. You just didn't know it." The color drained from Denzel's face completely. "This is a witch hunt. I'll sue. You'll do nothing," Dr. Brennan said. "Because if you fight this, we'll make every single document public. Every email, every testimony, every pattern of predatory behavior. Your medical license won't survive the scrutiny. But if you accept suspension pending investigation, there's a chance, a small chance, you might practice medicine again someday, somewhere else, under someone else's oversight. You're suspending me? Effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. You have 1 hour to clear your personal items from your office. Denzel looked at Juliet, and for a moment she saw the boy from college, the one with dreams and holes in his shoes. Then that boy disappeared behind the mask of a man she didn't recognize. "You'll regret this," he said. "No," Juliet replied. "I regret the 10 years I spent believing you. This I'm proud of." As security led Denzel from the room, he tried one last manipulation, his voice pleading, "Jules, please. You know me. You know I'm not this person they're making me out to be." She looked at him and felt nothing but a strange, distant pity. "You're right, Denzel. I don't know you. I never did." After he was gone, Kelly started crying. Then Dr. Patel. Then all 4 women, tears of relief and rage, and something that might have been grief for the careers they'd lost, the confidence Denzel had stolen. Juliet sat with them, holding hands, bearing witness to their pain, understanding for the first time that Denzel's cruelty extended far beyond her marriage. "Thank you," Jennifer Wu whispered. "Thank you for believing us." "I should have known sooner," Juliet said. "I should have seen." "He was good at hiding," Kara said. "That's what makes men like him so dangerous. They're excellent at showing people exactly what they want to see." Outside the hospital, Denzel stood on the sidewalk, his box of personal belongings at his feet, his phone pressed to his ear. Juliet didn't know it yet, but he was calling Bryn. And Bryn wasn't answering. Chapter 5. The friend who watched Asha Patel sat across from Juliet in the corner booth of the cafe where they'd been meeting for brunch every Sunday for 8 years. Except they hadn't met in 6 months. Juliet had noticed the distance, the cancelled plans, the text messages that took days to return. She'd assumed she was being paranoid, that grief over the miscarriage had made her needy and difficult. Denzel had encouraged that assumption. "You're being clingy," he'd said when she mentioned Asha's absence. "Give her space. Not everyone wants to deal with your emotional intensity right now." Now, watching Asha grip her coffee cup with white knuckles, refusing to meet Juliet's eyes, a different truth crystallized. "You knew," Juliet said. Not a question. Asha flinched. "Jules, how long?" 6 months, maybe 7. I wasn't counting." Asha's voice cracked. "I didn't want to know, so I pretended I didn't see. But I saw." Juliet felt something cold settle in her chest. "Tell me." "I saw them together. At that restaurant on 5th Street, the one with the outdoor patio. They were holding hands across the table. He was looking at her the way he used to look at you." Asha's eyes filled with tears. "I almost came over. Almost confronted him right there. But then he saw me, walked over like nothing was wrong, introduced her as a colleague from the hospital, said they were having a working dinner about some research project. And you believed him?" "I wanted to believe him. God, Jules, I wanted it so badly, because if I believed him, I didn't have to tell you. I didn't have to be the one to destroy your marriage." Juliet laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "He destroyed my marriage. You just watched." "I know." Asha was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "I know, and I hate myself for it. But there's more. Things I did that were worse than staying silent." "Tell me." Asha pulled out her phone, opened her text messages, and slid it across the table. The conversation with Denzel went back months. Juliet scrolled through messages that made her stomach turn. Denzel. "Asha, I'm worried about Jules. She's been so intense lately, so controlling. Have you noticed?" Asha. "She's been through a lot with the miscarriage. Cut her some slack." Denzel. "I try, but she's taking it out on me. Everything I do is wrong. I'm walking on eggshells in my own home." Asha. "That doesn't sound like her." Denzel. "It's not the her you know. She's different with me. Maybe talk to her, as her friend. Tell her she needs to ease up a little. I think she'd listen to you. And Asha had done it. Juliet remembered the conversation now, the one where Asha had gently suggested that maybe Juliet was being a little hard on Denzel lately, that grief could make people intense and demanding, that she should try to see things from his perspective. Juliet had taken the advice to heart, had apologized to Denzel for being difficult, had tried even harder to be the wife he needed, softer, easier, less demanding. She kept scrolling. Denzel, thanks for talking to her. You're a good friend. She doesn't appreciate how lucky she is to have you. Asha, she's my best friend. I just want her to be happy. Denzel, between us? I don't think she knows how to be happy. She's too focused on control, on appearances. Sometimes I wonder if she's capable of genuine joy. The messages continued, Denzel methodically planting seeds of doubt, painting Juliet as unstable, controlling, damaged. And Asha, slowly, gradually, had started to believe him. He isolated you from me, Asha said, her voice barely audible. I can see it now. Every message was designed to put distance between us, and I fell for it. I started believing his version of you instead of trusting what I knew about you. Juliet looked up from the phone, her expression carefully neutral. What changed? Why are you telling me now? Because I saw you yesterday, at the hospital after Denzel was suspended. I was there for a consulting job, and I saw you with those women, the ones he hurt. Asha's voice broke. I saw the way you held their hands while they cried, the way you listened to their stories like each word mattered. That's not the woman Denzel described. That's the friend I've known for 15 years, and I realized he'd been lying to me the same way he lied to you, making me doubt my own judgment, making me question everything I knew about you. He's good at that, Juliet said quietly. There's more. Asha took a shaky breath. Remember when you started dressing differently, stopped wearing bright colors, stopped laughing loudly at restaurants? Juliet remembered. It had been gradual, so subtle she hadn't noticed the change until she looked at photos from years ago and barely recognized herself. Denzel asked me to help with that, Asha said, shame flooding her face. He said you were going through something, that you needed guidance from a friend, that your attention-seeking behavior was becoming embarrassing at professional events. He asked me to gently suggest you tone it down. The memory came back sharp and clear. Asha taking Juliet shopping, suggesting maybe more neutral colors, would be sophisticated. Mentioning that maybe Juliet's laugh was a bit loud for certain settings. Framing it all as friendly advice, loving guidance. I helped him dim your light, Asha whispered. Jesus Christ, Jules, I helped him make you smaller. Juliet thought about the woman she used to be, bold, laughing, unafraid to take up space. When had she started apologizing for existing? When had she learned to make herself quiet, palatable, less? You remember my 40th birthday party? Asha continued. The one where Denzel made that toast about how patient he was with you, how understanding, how your quirks required a special kind of man, Juliet remembered. Everyone had laughed, toasted Denzel for being such a devoted husband. She had smiled and pretended the words didn't feel like cuts. I thought it was sweet, Asha said. I thought he was being self-deprecating and loving. I didn't realize he was humiliating you in front of everyone we knew, and I laughed. God, Jules, I laughed. So did I, Juliet said. I laughed and thanked him for loving me despite my flaws. Flaws he invented and then convinced me I had. Asha reached across the table, but Juliet pulled her hands back. Don't, Juliet said. Don't ask me to comfort you for what you did to me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to understand something. Asha pulled out more screenshots, these ones more recent. After I saw you at the hospital, I went through all my messages with Denzel. Look at this one, from 3 weeks ago. Denzel. If Jules calls you, don't answer. She's spiraling, making wild accusations. She's always been paranoid, but now she's becoming dangerous. I'm worried she might hurt herself or blame me for her mental state. I need you to stay neutral, okay? Don't feed into her delusions. He was building a case, Asher said. If you'd fought back, if you'd tried to tell people what he was doing, he had already planted the story that you were unstable, that you couldn't be trusted. Your best friend would have confirmed his narrative because he'd spent months making me believe it. Juliet felt cold. The manipulation was so complete, so thorough. Denzel hadn't just planned to leave her, he'd planned to make sure no one would believe her when she tried to tell the truth. There's something else, Asher said. Something I found that you need to see. She pulled out a small notebook, worn and water-damaged. After Marcus died, Denzel's brother, Estelle asked me to clean out his apartment. I found this in his bedside table. I almost threw it away, but something made me read it first. Juliet opened the notebook. Marcus's handwriting, loose and flowing, filled the pages. It was a journal, entries dating back several years. She found an entry from 4 years ago. Talked to Denzel today. He bragged about how he's training Juliet to be less opinionated. Said she used to challenge him, but now she checks with him before making decisions. He thought it was funny. I thought it was sick. I told him he was turning into dad, using control instead of love. He laughed and said, "Whatever works. I don't recognize my brother anymore." Another entry, more recent. Denzel told me he's planning to leave Juliet. Not because he doesn't love her. He said he never loved her. Just loved what she could give him. He's been setting up his exit for months, creating evidence that she's unstable, turning her friends against her. I asked if he felt any guilt. He said, "Why would I feel guilty for taking what I deserve?" I wanted to warn Juliet, but she'd never believe me over him. He's too good at playing the victim. The final entry was dated 2 weeks before Marcus died. I'm going to tell Juliet everything. Denzel needs to face consequences for what he's doing to her, to those women at the hospital. I called her today, asked if we could meet. She sounded so tired, so defeated, nothing like the woman who used to light up every room. My brother killed that woman, piece by piece. I won't let him finish the job. Tomorrow, I'm telling her everything. Marcus had died in a car accident the next day. A drunk driver, wrong place, wrong time. He never got to tell Juliet the truth. Juliet closed the notebook, her hands trembling. He knew. Marcus knew everything. He was trying to protect you, Asher said. And I should have been too. Instead, I helped Denzel destroy you. Why are you showing me this now? Because I'm going to testify. In the divorce, the hospital investigation, whatever you need. I'm going to tell them everything Denzel did to isolate you, to make you doubt yourself. Every message he sent trying to turn me against you. Every manipulation I fell for. Asher's voice was steady now, determined. I can't undo what I did, but I can make sure the world knows the truth about who Denzel Drew really is. Juliet looked at her oldest friend, the woman who had been her maid of honor, who had held her hand through her father's heart attack, who had celebrated every success and mourned every loss. The woman who had also, however unwittingly, helped her husband dismantle her sense of self. I don't know if I can forgive you, Juliet said honestly. I don't expect you to, Asher replied. I just need you to let me help fix what I broke. Juliet thought about Denzel's strategy, how he'd spent years building a narrative where she was the villain, how he'd recruited her best friend, his own mother, her colleagues into his elaborate lie, but he'd made one critical mistake. He'd assumed that once people saw the truth, they'd stay loyal to him out of embarrassment for being fooled. Instead, they were angry, and angry people made powerful allies. Okay, Juliet said. Tell me everything he said, everything he asked you to do, every time he tried to make you doubt me. I need all of it. Asher nodded, pulling out her phone again. I made copies of everything. Every text, every email, every conversation I can remember. I even recorded our last phone call when he tried to convince me you were having a breakdown. You recorded him? I'd started to suspect something was wrong. The way he talked about you didn't match the friend I knew, so I started documenting everything just in case. Asher met Juliet's eyes. I may have failed you as a friend, but I won't fail you as a witness. They spent the next 4 hours going through everything. Every manipulation, every lie, every strategic move Denzel had made to isolate Juliet from the people who loved her. By the end, Juliet had a comprehensive timeline of psychological abuse that would make any divorce attorney salivate. "He's going to claim you're biased," Asha warned, "that you're just a bitter friend who's taking sides." "Let him," Juliet said. "The messages speak for themselves. And Asha, I have messages too, ones Denzel doesn't know about." She pulled out her own phone and showed Asha the journal entries she'd found on Denzel's computer, the ones where he detailed his manipulation strategies, his plans to make Juliet look unstable. "He documented his own abuse," Asha breathed, "like he was proud of it." He was proud of it. He thought he was smart, untouchable. Juliet smiled grimly. He forgot that smart people leave evidence, and evidence doesn't lie. As they left the cafe, Asha stopped Juliet on the sidewalk. "Jules, I need to ask you something. That recording I have of Denzel, there's a part where he talks about the miscarriage, about how it worked out for him because you were weaker and more dependent afterward." Asha's voice broke. "Do you want me to include that in my testimony?" Juliet thought about the worst moment of her life, the baby she'd lost alone, the grief Denzel had weaponized against her. "Include it all," she said. "Every cruel word, every calculated move. I want the world to see exactly who Denzel Drew is when no one's watching." That night, Juliet sat in her home office, surrounded by documents and testimony and evidence of her husband's systematic cruelty. She should have felt vindicated. Instead, she felt grief, not for her marriage, but for the years she'd lost believing Denzel's version of reality. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Drew, this is Bryn. We need to talk." Chapter 6. Denzel's Masterpiece. Bryn Santos stood in the lobby of Juliet's building, her yoga mat bag slung over one shoulder, wearing the kind of carefully curated casualness that took effort to achieve. Juliet studied her through the security camera before buzzing her up. Young, maybe 28. Pretty in an accessible way that made down-to-earth seem plausible. Exactly the kind of woman who would make Denzel look like a man who valued substance over status. "Thank you for seeing me," Bryn said when Juliet opened the door. Her voice was shakier than Juliet expected. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to talk to." "You're right." Juliet stepped aside to let her in. "But I'm curious what could possibly bring you here." Bryn walked into the penthouse, her eyes widening slightly at the space, the view, the obvious wealth. Juliet watched her calculate, saw the moment reality crashed against whatever story Denzel had told her. "He said you lived modestly," Bryn said, then caught herself. "Sorry, that's not why I'm here." "Why are you here?" Bryn sat on the edge of the sofa, clutching her bag like a shield. "Denzel is suing you. He hired this lawyer, Richard Vance, and they're building a case that you were financially abusive, that you controlled him with money, isolated him from friends, made him feel worthless." She looked up, her eyes pleading. "He wants me to testify, to say I witnessed your controlling behavior, that he told me about the abuse, that I'm evidence of how desperate he was to escape you. And you came here to warn me?" "I came here because I read the hospital report, about the women he harassed, about what he did to them." Bryn's voice cracked. "He told me you fabricated those allegations, that you were so angry he left you that you destroyed his career with lies. But then I talked to one of them, Kelly. She found me, showed me the emails Denzel sent her. They were exactly like the ones he sent me." Juliet sat down across from Bryn, studying her carefully. "What did he tell you about me?" "That you were cold, obsessed with appearances, that you couldn't have children because you were too focused on your career." Bryn's face flushed with shame. "He said the miscarriage was your fault, that you worked through the pregnancy, ignored doctor's orders, and when you lost the baby, you blamed him. He made it sound like you were cruel and broken, and he was just trying to survive a loveless marriage." Every word was a knife, precisely placed to cut deepest. What changed your mind? I asked him for money, Bryn said simply. 3 days after he moved in with me, my car broke down and I needed $800 for repairs. He said he didn't have it, said you'd cancelled his credit cards and frozen his accounts out of spite, so I paid for it myself. She laughed bitterly. Then my landlord called, said the rent was late. Denzel had promised to pay it since he was staying there, another $1,500 I had to cover. Let me guess, he had explanations. So many explanations. You were vindictive. The legal battle was expensive. His assets were tied up. He'd pay me back as soon as the divorce settled. Bryn's hands twisted together. But then I noticed other things. The way he'd order expensive wine at restaurants and expect me to pay. How he'd talk about our future but never contribute to our present. The subtle criticism started. My apartment was too small, my friends were too loud, my job was cute but not serious. He was making you smaller, Juliet said. Yes, and I was letting him because I thought I was special. The woman who saw the real Denzel Drew, the one his cold wife couldn't appreciate. Bryn's eyes filled with tears. I was such a cliché. You were manipulated by someone very good at manipulation. There's a difference. He's going to destroy you in court, Bryn said urgently. His lawyer is vicious. They have a whole strategy. Make you look like a controlling rich woman who bought a poor black man and then punished him for wanting his freedom. They're going to use race, class, everything. Make you the villain in a story people want to believe. Juliet had expected this. Denzel was smart enough to know that certain narratives had power, that he could position himself as a victim of systems larger than their marriage. What are they asking you to testify to? Bryn pulled out a document. They gave me this, suggested talking points. Look at number 7. Juliet read. Describe instances where Juliet monitored Denzel's communications, controlled his finances, or isolated him from family and friends. Emphasize her possessive behavior and his fear of her reactions. They want me to lie, Bryn said. To say I witnessed things I never saw, and they're confident I'll do it because I'm invested in the outcome of being with Denzel. Are you? Invested? Bryn laughed, sharp and bitter. He dumped me yesterday, said I was becoming too demanding, and he needed to focus on his legal battle. Kicked me out of my own apartment, the one he'd been staying in rent-free, and said I should be grateful he's giving me space to think about what I really want. Juliet almost felt sorry for her. Almost. So you came here for what? Revenge? I came here for truth, Bryn said firmly. He asked me to lie about you, to help him steal money from the woman who actually built everything he claims he created. I may have been stupid enough to sleep with a married man, but I'm not cruel enough to help him rob you. What do you want in exchange for your testimony? Nothing. I just want to stop him from doing to you what he's done to everyone else. Bryn met Juliet's eyes. I'm sorry. For the affair, for believing his lies about you, for not seeing what he was until it was too late. I can't undo sleeping with your husband, but I can make sure he doesn't profit from destroying you. Juliet studied this young woman who had been both weapon and victim in Denzel's war. Tell me everything he said about his legal strategy, everything his lawyer told you, every piece of their plan. For the next 2 hours, Bryn detailed Denzel's masterpiece of manipulation. The carefully crafted narrative of a successful black doctor escaping the financial control of his wealthy white wife. The evidence they'd compiled, texts taken out of context, testimonies from people who only saw what Denzel wanted them to see, character witnesses who would attest to his dedication and her coldness. They're launching a PR campaign, Bryn said. His lawyer knows someone at the local news station. They're planning an interview where Denzel talks about emotional abuse in marriages, how wealth can be weaponized, how he's just trying to rebuild his life after escaping a toxic situation. When? Tomorrow night. Primetime local news. They want to control the narrative before you can. Juliet's phone rang. Her attorney, Victoria Sterling, the most ruthless divorce lawyer in the state. "Turn on Channel 7, Victoria said without preamble. "Your husband just gave an interview." Juliet grabbed the remote. The news anchor's face filled the screen, sympathetic and engaged. "Dr. Denzel Drew, thank you for speaking with us about your difficult situation." Then Denzel appeared, and Juliet's breath caught. He looked smaller somehow, vulnerable. His eyes were red-rimmed, his voice soft and pained. "I never wanted it to come to this," he said. "But I can't stay silent anymore. For 10 years, I was in a marriage where I felt controlled, diminished, trapped. When you marry someone with significant wealth, there's this power imbalance that's hard to describe to people who haven't lived it." The interviewer leaned in. "Can you give us an example?" "Every decision required her approval. Where we lived, who we saw, how I spent my time. If I questioned anything, she'd remind me whose money paid for our life. After a while, you start to feel like you're not a partner. You're an employee." His voice broke convincingly. "When we lost our baby, I was devastated. But she blamed me. Said I wasn't there enough, that I'd chosen work over our child. She used that grief as a weapon for years, reminding me constantly that I'd failed as a husband, as a father-to-be." Juliet felt sick watching him weaponize their worst pain. "The hospital suspended you recently," the interviewer said. "Your wife claims—" "My wife owns the hospital," Denzel interrupted gently, "through her father's investments. When I tried to leave the marriage, she used her power to destroy my career. The allegations are false, made by women she paid to lie about me. It's been devastating to watch my reputation destroyed because I wanted my freedom." "That's a serious accusation." "I have evidence," Denzel said, his expression earnest. "Emails showing financial transactions between my wife and these women. Testimony that she approached them only after I filed for divorce. This isn't about justice, it's about punishment." The interview continued, Denzel painting himself as a man who'd overcome poverty and racism to become a doctor, only to find himself trapped in a marriage where his wife's money gave her ultimate power over his life. "I just want other people in my situation to know they're not alone," he concluded, "that leaving an abusive situation is possible, even when your partner has all the resources." The screen cut back to the anchor. "Powerful testimony from Dr. Drew. We reached out to Juliet Wagner for comment, but she declined to be interviewed." Juliet turned off the TV, her hands shaking with rage. "He's brilliant," Victoria said over the phone. "Absolutely brilliant. He's positioned himself as the victim of a powerful woman, wrapped it in legitimate conversations about abuse and power dynamics, and made himself sympathetic. By tomorrow, social media will be full of people defending him. Can we fight this?" "In court, yes. In public opinion." Victoria paused. "That's harder. He's hitting every pressure point, race, class, gender dynamics in relationships. He's making people feel like supporting him is supporting all victims of abuse. But he's lying. Truth doesn't always matter in the court of public opinion. Narrative does. And right now, his narrative is compelling." After the call ended, Juliet looked at Bryn, who had watched the interview with growing horror. "That's not the man I thought I knew," Bryn whispered. "The man I thought I loved would never lie like that." "That man never existed," Juliet said. "You loved a performance. We both did." Her phone exploded with messages, some supportive, but many echoing Denzel's narrative. Friends asking if there was truth to his allegations. Colleagues suddenly distant. Her social media filling with strangers calling her an abuser, demanding she leave that poor man alone. Denzel's masterpiece was working exactly as planned. Juliet's father called. "Don't respond. Don't give interviews. Let him think he's winning. He is winning. No, baby girl, he's overplaying his hand. Men like Denzel always do. They get confident, make mistakes. We just need to wait for him to slip." But Juliet wasn't sure she could wait. She watched her reputation crumble in real time, watched people believe Denzel's lies, watched him position himself as a hero while painting her as a monster. That night, she barely slept. She kept seeing Denzel's face on the screen, his perfect performance of victimhood. his strategic deployment of their marriage's worst moments as evidence of her abuse. At 3 a.m., her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number with a video attachment. She opened it. The video was from a restaurant security camera. Denzel sat across from his lawyer, Richard Vance, drinks between them, clearly celebrating. Someone had sent her the audio too. She put in her earbuds and pressed play. Denzel's voice, loose with alcohol. "Did you see her face when I mentioned the miscarriage? God, that's going to destroy her in court. Use her dead baby against her. It's perfect." Richard's voice. "You're sure she can't trace those emails to you? The ones we sent to those women pretending to be from her?" Positive. Used a VPN. Burner email. "By the time anyone proves they're fake, the damage is done. Public opinion will be on my side." "And you're certain the yoga instructor will testify?" Denzel laughed. "Bryn. She'll do whatever I tell her. She's desperate to keep me. I'll dangle the promise of a future together, get her testimony, then cut her loose. She's too poor and too dumb to fight back." The video ended. Juliet sat in the darkness holding her phone and smiled for the first time in days. Denzel had made his mistake, and someone had caught it on camera. Chapter 7. The recording that ends him. The deposition room felt like a gladiator arena dressed in corporate neutrality. Juliet sat beside Victoria Sterling, her attorney whose reputation for destroying opposing counsel was legendary. Across the table, Denzel sat with Richard Vance, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and an expression of wounded dignity. The court reporter's fingers hovered over her stenography machine. The camera in the corner recorded everything for posterity. Denzel had requested this deposition be recorded, confident in his narrative, ready to perform his victimhood for the official record. It was about to become the worst decision of his life. "Let's begin," Richard Vance said, his voice smooth and confident. "Dr. Drew, please describe the financial dynamics of your marriage." Denzel leaned forward, his expression earnest. "From the beginning, Juliet controlled all financial decisions. Her family's wealth was used as a constant reminder of my dependence. I contributed what I could from my medical practice, but she made it clear that the real money, the house, the cars, the lifestyle, all came from her family." "And how did that make you feel?" "Small, powerless, like I was a pet she could discard whenever she tired of me." Denzel's voice cracked perfectly. "I built my career, saved lives, became respected in my field. But at home, none of that mattered. I was just the poor kid she married who should be grateful for her generosity." Victoria made notes, her expression unreadable. Juliet sat perfectly still, watching her husband lie with the confidence of someone who believed his own fiction. "Tell us about the miscarriage," Richard prompted. Juliet's hands clenched under the table, but her face remained calm. "It was the worst time of my life," Denzel said, and his grief looked real enough to convince anyone who didn't know better. "We lost our baby and I was devastated, but Juliet, she blamed me, said I wasn't there enough, that I'd chosen work over our child. She used that grief as a weapon for years, reminding me constantly that I'd failed as a husband, as a father-to-be." "That's interesting," Victoria said, speaking for the first time. "Because the hospital records show that Mrs. Wagner drove herself to the emergency room at 3:17 a.m. She called you 17 times. You didn't arrive until the next afternoon, still wearing your conference badge. Would you like to revise your testimony about who blamed whom?" Denzel's mask slipped for a fraction of a second. "I was unreachable. I came as soon as I could. You were unreachable for 14 hours while your wife hemorrhaged alone." Victoria's voice was scalpel sharp. "Interesting definition of as soon as possible." Richard jumped in. "My client's response time doesn't negate the emotional abuse he suffered afterward." "We'll get to that," Victoria said mildly. "Dr. Drew, you've claimed in public interviews that my client paid the women who accused you of harassment. Can you provide evidence of these payments?" "I have records." "You have fabricated emails sent from a burner account using a VPN," Victoria interrupted. "We had our IT specialists trace them. Would you like to explain why you sent yourself emails pretending to be from Mrs. Wagner? The room went very quiet. That's absurd, Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. Victoria slid a folder across the table. IP addresses, timestamps, metadata, all pointing to Dr. Drew's laptop. You're not just a liar, Dr. Drew, you're a sloppy one. Denzel's jaw tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's try something different, Victoria said. Let's talk about your relationship with Bryn Santos. Bryn was someone who made me feel valued, Denzel said, recovering his composure. She saw me as a person, not a paycheck. Is that why you told her she was too poor and too dumb to fight back when you planned to use her testimony and then discard her? Denzel went pale. What? Victoria pulled out her laptop and turned it around. I have a video I'd like to enter into evidence. Restaurant security footage from the brass room. She pressed play. The conference room filled with Denzel's voice, drunk and careless, describing his strategy to manipulate Bryn, fake evidence, use Juliet's dead baby against her. Every word was clear, damning, irrefutable. Richard Vance stood up. Where did you get that? From an anonymous source, Victoria said calmly, which is irrelevant since Dr. Drew's voice is clearly identifiable, and he's in a public establishment where he had no reasonable expectation of privacy. Denzel looked like he might be sick. That's out of context. Then please, Victoria gestured expansively, provide the context in which planning to use your wife's miscarriage as a legal weapon is acceptable. Silence. Victoria continued, relentless. Let's hear more from your own words, shall we? These are journal entries from your personal computer, recovered with a warrant after the hospital investigation. She began reading, her voice clinical, detached. Juliet cried again today about the baby. Maybe it was for the best. She would have been an anxious mother anyway. Denzel flinched. Married Juliet today. Her world, her connections, her money. It's all going to make me into someone important. She's my ticket out of everything I used to be. The therapist is easy to manipulate. These sessions will be excellent evidence when the time comes. Victoria looked up. Should I continue? I have 47 more pages. This deposition is over, Richard said, gathering his papers. Sit down, counselor, Victoria said pleasantly. Or I'll add walking out of a legal deposition to the list of sanctions I'm requesting. Dr. Drew, there's one more recording I'd like you to hear. She pulled out another device. This is from your father-in-law's 60th birthday party. You thought the microphone was off. The recording played, and Denzel's voice filled the room. Younger, wine-drunk, venomous. The conversation in the garden where he'd told Juliet she was exhausting, that Bryn was better, that he'd married her because it was easier than earning what she could give him. But there was more on this recording that Juliet hadn't heard before. After Denzel's cruelty, Juliet's voice, young and broken. Then why stay? Denzel's laugh, cold and calculating. Because divorce is expensive, and you're worth more to me married than single. I've been building my reputation as the devoted husband. When I finally leave, everyone will assume you're the problem. By then, I'll be established enough to take half of everything without looking like I'm just after your money. So you've been planning to leave me for 2 years at that point, maybe longer. I stopped loving you the moment I realized you'd never let me forget whose money really paid for our life. But I'm patient. I can pretend for another few years if it means I get what I deserve when I finally go. The recording ended. Juliet hadn't known this conversation was captured, hadn't known that her father's videographer had accidentally recorded the moment her marriage died, years before she understood it was over. Denzel stared at the table, all performance stripped away, leaving only a man who'd been caught in his own trap. Dr. Drew, Victoria said softly, would you like to revise any of your testimony? Now would be the time. Richard Vance was frantically typing on his phone. After a moment, he looked up. I need to speak with my client privately. Of course, Victoria said. We'll recess for 15 minutes. In the hallway, Juliet finally let herself breathe. Victoria squeezed her shoulder. He's done. That recording, especially the birthday party one where he admits to a premeditated multi-year plan to defraud you, that's game over. You found that in the videographer's footage? Your father kept it. He had the whole party recorded, every moment. When he heard Denzel's voice on the audio, he had it digitally enhanced. He was saving it for when you needed it. Juliet thought about her father, who'd always known, always protected, always believed she'd find her way to the truth eventually. 15 minutes later, Richard Vance returned alone. My client has withdrawn from this deposition. We'll be filing for dismissal of all counterclaims. Excellent, Victoria said. And the public statements Dr. Drew made to the press will be retracted with a full apology. We're prepared to offer a settlement. No settlement, Juliet said, speaking for the first time. I want this to go to trial. I want every lie he told exposed in public record. I want those women he harassed to see him held accountable. I want the world to know exactly who Denzel Drew is. Richard's face went pale. Mrs. Wagner, a trial will be expensive, time-consuming. I don't care about time. I don't care about money. I care about truth. Juliet stood. See you in court, Mr. Vance. As they left the building, Victoria turned to Juliet. You know he'll try to settle before trial, offer you everything just to keep those recordings private. Let him try, Juliet said. I'm not interested in his money. I'm interested in his accountability. That night, Juliet received an email from Richard Vance. A settlement offer. Denzel would accept a divorce with no financial claims, public apology, admission of fault. She deleted it without responding. Then she received a call from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered, Juliet. Denzel's voice, stripped of all its charm and performance. Please, let's talk about this. We don't need to destroy each other. I'm not destroying you, Denzel. I'm revealing you. There's a difference. Those recordings, they make me sound like a monster. They make you sound exactly like what you are. I was angry, drunk. People say things they don't mean. You meant every word. You planned every move. You documented your own cruelty because you were proud of it. Juliet's voice was steady, calm. You just never thought you'd get caught. If this goes to trial, it'll destroy both of us. The press will... I don't care what the press says. I care that Kelly can work in healthcare again without fear. I care that Dr. Patel doesn't have to hide in another state. I care that every woman you hurt gets to see you face consequences. What about us? What about everything we built together? We didn't build anything together, Denzel. I built everything while you took credit and planned my destruction. There is no us. There never was. Jules, please, don't call me that. You lost the right to call me that when you decided my dead baby was useful legal strategy. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. She hung up. Outside her window, the city glittered indifferently. Somewhere out there, Denzel was realizing that his masterpiece had become his ruin, that every weapon he'd crafted to destroy her had been turned back on him. Juliet didn't feel triumph. She felt tired, but she also felt free. Chapter 8. The Man in the Mirror. Denzel Drew stood outside Juliet's building at 11 p.m., his finger hovering over the buzzer. He'd lost 20 pounds. His clothes hung wrong, expensive fabric draping over a frame diminished by stress and sleepless nights. His lawyer had quit. His mother wouldn't return his calls. Bryn had given a devastating interview to the same news station that had hosted his victim performance, systematically dismantling every lie he'd told. He had nothing left but the truth, and he was terrified of what it would reveal. He pressed the buzzer. Go away, Denzel. Juliet's voice through the intercom, tired but firm. Please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Silence. Then the door clicked open. She waited in the doorway of the penthouse, not inviting him in, her arms crossed, her expression carefully neutral. She looked different. Her hair was natural now, wild and free the way she'd worn it in college. She wore bright red, a color he'd convinced her was too much for someone her age. She looked like herself again, like someone he'd spent 10 years trying to erase. You have 5 minutes, she said. Denzel walked to the living room window, looking out at the city he'd once felt on top of. Now it felt like it was crushing him. "I don't know how to do this," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't know how to apologize for destroying someone's life." "Then don't. Apologies require genuine remorse, and I don't think you're capable of that." "You're right." He turned to face her. "I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to, I don't even know, to try to understand when I became this person. You think this is about what you did to me, but it's about what I did to myself. I knew Denzel, maybe not consciously, but I felt it, every small cruelty, every dismissal. And I stayed. I made myself smaller because I thought that's what love required. You didn't destroy me. I was destroying myself to keep you." She stood. "I don't hate you anymore. I hate who I became for you." Denzel walked to the door, then stopped. "The man you married in college, the one with dreams and holes in his shoes, he was real. I didn't fake loving you then." "I know. That's what makes this so much worse. You were capable of real love, real partnership. You just chose cruelty instead. You chose it every day for 8 years. After he left, Juliet stood at the window for a long time, watching the city breathe below her. She felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness, but understanding. Denzel wasn't a monster. He was a broken man who'd chosen to break others rather than heal himself. That didn't excuse him, but it freed her from the need to understand why she hadn't been enough. She had been enough. She had always been enough. He was the one who was lacking. Her phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. "Trial date set. 3 weeks. Are you ready?" Juliet typed back, "I've been ready for years, I just didn't know it." She looked at herself in the window's reflection. Really looked. The woman staring back was stronger than the girl who'd married Denzel. Harder, yes, but also clearer, more certain, less afraid. That woman could face anything, even the truth. Chapter 9. The Trial. The courthouse steps were a circus of media, protesters with signs reading "Believe Survivors" and "Justice for Dr. Drew," and curious onlookers hoping to witness the spectacular destruction of a marriage. Juliet walked through it all with her head high, Victoria Sterling at her side, her father flanking her other shoulder. She wore navy blue, professional, calm, unshakable. Across the plaza, Denzel climbed the steps alone. No lawyer beside him. He'd fired Richard Vance and couldn't afford another attorney. No supporters, no family. Even Estelle had made clear she wouldn't stand beside her son when he stood against truth. The courtroom was packed. In the gallery sat Kelly, Dr. Patel, Kara and Jennifer, the 4 women whose careers Denzel had destroyed. Beside them, Asha, clutching a folder of evidence. Dr. Hugo Brennan representing the hospital's interests. And Bryn, the mistress who'd become a witness for the prosecution. Judge Helena Winters entered, and the room fell silent. She was a black woman in her mid-60s, her expression suggesting she'd seen every manipulation, every lie, every theatrical performance the justice system had to offer. She would not be easily fooled. "This is a divorce proceeding," Judge Winters said, her voice cutting through the tension. "However, given the serious allegations on both sides, I've agreed to hear testimony that might typically be excluded. Mr. Drew, I understand you're representing yourself?" Denzel stood. "Yes, Your Honor." "Bold choice. Mrs. Wagner, your counsel?" Victoria stood. "Victoria Sterling for the petitioner, Your Honor." "Let's begin. Ms. Sterling, your opening statement." Victoria approached the bench, every movement deliberate. "Your Honor, this case is about a man who saw marriage as a business transaction and his wife as a resource to be extracted and depleted. For 10 years, Denzel Drew benefited from Juliet Wagner's financial support, family connections, and emotional labor. When he decided to leave, he didn't simply file for divorce. He launched a campaign to destroy her credibility, reputation, and sense of self. He fabricated evidence, manipulated witnesses, and used his public platform to paint himself as a victim of abuse while simultaneously abusing every woman who trusted him. She gestured to the gallery. "The women seated behind me are not here for revenge. They're here because Dr. Drew used his position to harass them, then used his power to silence them. When that failed, he tried to make them complicit in his fraud against his wife. This trial will prove that Denzel Drew is not a victim of a controlling woman. He's a calculating predator who spent years perfecting the art of manipulation." Denzel stood for his opening statement, and Juliet braced herself for whatever performance he'd prepared. But he didn't perform. He simply stood there, looking broken and small. "Your Honor, I'm not going to pretend I'm innocent. I'm not going to claim I was a perfect husband or a good man." His voice was quiet, defeated. "Ms. Sterling is right about most of what she said. I did manipulate people. I did hurt women who trusted me. I did plan to destroy my wife's reputation to protect my own interests." He paused. "The only thing I contest is the motive. I didn't do these things because I'm inherently evil. I did them because I was terrified of being powerless, and I chose cruelty over vulnerability every single time." Judge Winters raised an eyebrow. "Are you pleading guilty to the allegations, Mr. Drew?" "I'm pleading honest, Your Honor. I did what I'm accused of. The question before this court isn't whether I did it, but what the consequences should be." Victoria looked surprised. Juliet felt nothing but exhaustion. Even Denzel's confession felt like manipulation. One last attempt to control the narrative by seeming contrite. "Very well," Judge Winters said. "Miss Sterling, call your first witness." The testimony lasted 3 days. Estelle testified to 15 years of lies. Kelly described emails that promised advancement in exchange for silence. Dr. Patel told of being cornered in a supply closet, then gaslit when she reported it. Each woman revealed a pattern. Denzel identified vulnerability, offered mentorship, twisted it into something predatory, then destroyed anyone who resisted. Denzel didn't cross-examine them. He simply listened, his head bowed, accepting their testimony as fact. When it was Juliet's turn, she walked to the stand feeling strangely calm. This was the moment she'd been preparing for, the moment when she'd tell her truth in a room that had to listen. Under Victoria's gentle questioning, Juliet described her marriage, the 3 jobs she'd worked to put Denzel through medical school, the investment her father made when no one else would, the 15 years of paying for everything while Denzel took credit, the miscarriage she suffered alone while he networked at a conference. "Mrs. Wagner, you discovered evidence that your husband had been planning this divorce for 18 months before he mentioned it to you. How did you react?" "I felt stupid. I'd been living with a stranger who wore my husband's face, and I'd been so desperate to believe in our marriage that I ignored every sign that it was already over." When Denzel stood to cross-examine her, the courtroom went silent. "Juliet," he said quietly, using her name instead of a formal address. "I'm not going to ask questions designed to discredit your testimony. Everything you've said is true. I just want to ask you one thing, and I need an honest answer." Judge Winters looked like she wanted to object, but she waited. "Was there ever a moment when I was the man you thought I was, or was that person always a lie?" Juliet considered the question carefully. This was Denzel's last manipulation, making himself vulnerable, making her responsible for defining their entire history. But she owed him nothing, least of all a comfortable narrative. "You were that man once," she said. "In college, when you had nothing but dreams and determination. But somewhere between then and now, you chose to become someone else. You chose cruelty over vulnerability. You chose credit over partnership. Those were your choices, Denzel, not mine. Don't ask me to absolve you by saying you were always this person. You became this person. That's worse." He nodded slowly, accepting the answer. Victoria's closing argument summarized the evidence, the financial records, the testimony from multiple women, the recordings demonstrating premeditated fraud. Denzel didn't make a closing argument. He simply stood and said, "Your Honor, I don't contest any of the facts presented. I ask only that the court recognize these weren't the actions of a victim, but of a man who chose power over integrity at every turn. Mrs. Wagner deserves everything she's asking for, and she deserves to rebuild her life without me anywhere in it. Judge Winters reviewed her notes for what felt like hours. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Drew, I've been on this bench for 23 years. I've seen men like you before. Intelligent, charismatic, skilled at playing victim while victimizing others. What makes this case unusual is your apparent acceptance of guilt. She paused. However, accepting guilt doesn't erase harm. It doesn't restore careers you destroyed or heal marriages you decimated through calculated cruelty. She turned to Juliet. Mrs. Wagner, you are granted full dissolution of marriage. All assets acquired during the marriage, the home, the hospital shares, the investments, remain in your sole possession as they were funded entirely by you or your family. Mr. Drew contributed approximately 11% of marital income while consuming approximately 89% of marital expenditure. The court finds no basis for equitable distribution. Denzel showed no reaction. Furthermore, Judge Winters continued, regarding the allegations of harassment and professional misconduct, while this is a civil proceeding and cannot result in criminal charges, I am recommending that the State Medical Board review Dr. Drew's license. The pattern of behavior documented here suggests someone unfit to hold power over vulnerable people. She looked at Denzel directly. Mr. Drew, you asked what the consequences should be. Here they are. You leave this marriage with exactly what you brought into it, your medical degree and your capacity to choose differently next time. Whether you do so is up to you. This court is adjourned. As they exited the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Denzel tried one last play, his voice breaking. Juliet, please. I need to talk to you. She turned, and her voice was clear. No, Denzel, we're done talking. I spent 10 years listening to you explain why I wasn't enough. I'm finally listening to myself. She walked away without looking back, and he realized she meant it. He'd been erased. Chapter 10. The Woman Who Remained 6 months later. Denzel works at a community clinic in another state, living in a studio apartment that smells like regret and instant coffee. Legal debt crushes him monthly, payment plans that will take years to clear. His medical license survived barely with conditions, supervised practice only, mandatory ethics training, random reviews. He's a doctor in name, but everyone knows what he is. The whispers follow him. Patients request different physicians. Colleagues eat lunch at different tables. Bryn contacted him twice, both times demanding money she claimed he owed her. She was never pregnant, just desperate and looking for one last payday from the man who'd used her. He blocked her number. Estelle sends cards on holidays, short messages in her trembling hand. Thinking of you. Love, Mom. She still loves her son. Mothers don't stop loving their children even when their children become strangers. But she can't look at him the same way. The distance between them aches like an old wound that never quite heals. He's alone with the man in the mirror, and most days, he can't stand to look. Meanwhile, Juliet stands in her home office where Denzel announced he was leaving. The same room, the same windows, but everything feels different now. She's different. Her hair is natural, thick, curly, wild, the way she wore it in college before he convinced her it looked unprofessional. She wears bright colors now, reds and yellows and electric blues that make her feel alive. Her laugh comes easily, loud and unrestrained, filling spaces she used to make herself small in. The foundation she started, Second Beginning, operates out of 3 offices now. Women come through those doors carrying confusion she once carried. Am I crazy? Am I overreacting? You're not crazy, Juliet tells them, holding their hands. You're not too sensitive. You're not imagining it. What you're feeling is real, and it matters. Last week, a woman came in who reminded Juliet of herself from years ago, apologizing for taking up time, minimizing her husband's cruelty, convinced she was overreacting. You're seeing clearly for the first time, Juliet had said. Trust what you see. The woman had cried, the kind of tears that come from finally being believed. On Juliet's desk sits an unopened letter from Denzel. It arrived 3 days ago, his handwriting shakier than she remembers, the return address from that clinic in another state. She knows what it contains without opening it. She's received 4 others just like it over the past 6 months. Apology, justification, some careful blend designed to make her feel something, anything toward him. She picks up the envelope, feeling its weight. Once this would have mattered. Once she would have torn it open immediately, hungry for any explanation. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. For a moment, she lets herself remember. Not the man who destroyed her, but the boy from college. The one with holes in his shoes and dreams that burned brighter than his circumstances. She mourns that boy, not because she wants him back, but because potential wasted is always worth grieving. Then she drops the letter, still sealed, into the shredder beside her desk. The machine whirs to life. Paper becomes confetti. The sound is final, satisfying in its finality. She doesn't feel triumph. She doesn't feel satisfaction. She feels nothing, and that nothingness is its own kind of power. Her phone buzzes. Usher. Dinner tonight. Found this amazing Ethiopian place. My treat. I owe you about 1,000 dinners for being a terrible friend. Juliet smiles. You've apologized enough. Yes, I'll wear that red dress you said was too bright. The one I love. Another text from Kelly. Coffee next week? Got the nursing job at Mercy Hospital. Start Monday. Couldn't have done this without you. Then Dr. Patel. Opened my practice today. First patient at 9 a.m. Thank you for giving me my life back. Juliet reads each message, warmth spreading through her chest. This is what revenge looks like when it's done right. Not Denzel's destruction, but these women's resurrection. Every career rebuilt, every voice reclaimed, every woman who learned she didn't have to stay small to survive. She walks to the window. The city spreads out below her, lights beginning to flicker on as evening approaches. Somewhere out there, Denzel is probably sitting in his small apartment, eating dinner alone, wondering if he'll ever stop paying for what he did. She hopes he never does. Not because she hates him, she doesn't have enough feeling left for hate, but because consequences matter. Because men like Denzel need to understand that some things, once broken, can't be fixed with apologies written in shaky handwriting. Her reflection catches in the darkening window. She studies the woman looking back. Not Denzel's wife, not her father's daughter, not someone's victim or villain. Not the girl who made herself small enough to fit into a man's pocket. Just Juliet, complete, whole, enough. She remembers the exact moment she forgot that, 2 years into her marriage, at a dinner party, when she'd laughed at something and Denzel had touched her arm gently, privately, and whispered, "Inside voice, Jules." She'd apologized reflexively, made herself quieter, and spent the rest of the evening barely speaking. She won't forget again. She's built a foundation on the principle, you were always enough. The women who come through her doors, scared, doubting, convinced they're broken, they need to hear it. So she tells them, again and again, until they believe it the way she finally believes it. Her father calls. Dinner Sunday? Your mother wants to cook. I'll be there, she says and means it. She's stopped avoiding family dinners. Stopped caring what anyone thinks about her divorce, stopped explaining herself to people who never asked for the truth anyway. As she gathers her things, laptop, keys, the red dress, she pauses at the office door. This room used to haunt her. Now it's just a room. The ghost of her marriage doesn't live here anymore. She exorcised it with truth, burned it down with evidence, buried it with indifference. She thinks about the letter now dissolving into confetti inside her shredder. Denzel probably spent hours writing it, choosing each word carefully, hoping to evoke something, forgiveness maybe, or acknowledgement that he exists, that he matters. But here's what he'll never understand. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And Juliet is gloriously, powerfully, completely indifferent to Denzel Drew. She slides into her car and drives toward dinner with a friend who betrayed her and then fought like hell to earn back trust. Toward Ethiopian food and laughter and a red dress that's too bright for a woman who used to believe she should be invisible. Toward a life that's entirely, beautifully, undeniably hers. The city lights blur past as she drives. For the first time in 10 years, Juliet doesn't think about Denzel at all. She thinks about tomorrow, the woman coming to the foundation at 9 a.m. who needs to hear that leaving is possible. The board meeting where she'll propose expanding to 2 more cities. Herself, who she is now, who she's becoming. At a red light, she catches her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her lipstick is bright red. Her eyes are clear. Her smile is real. "You did it," she whispers to herself. Not the divorce, not the trial, not even the foundation. She did the hardest thing of all. She found herself again. The light turns green. Juliet drives forward, leaving the past exactly where it belongs, behind her, getting smaller in the mirror until it finally disappears. She was always enough. She just forgot for a while. She won't forget again.